This is the Nightbird, Alison Steele, for the United States Army Reserve, and our guest today is Rick Wakeman. And we're listening to Rick's fantastic new album, Journey to the Center of the Earth, based on the Jules Verne story. Rick Wakeman, and the first two cuts from the album, Journey to the Center of the Earth, the introduction and the journey. And I am really delighted to have Rick Wakeman in the studio. Welcome, Rick.
Hello.
This is your first visit now since this album is out, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
It's probably the most exciting piece of music that we've heard in ages, and everyone here is just so excited about it, but they're even more excited about the big question in America now is what is happening with Rick Wakeman and Yes.
Well, I actually left the band about 3 weeks ago, which was shortly after we finished the European tour, which followed the American tour. And I'm now mainly working on bringing the journey as a concert to various places around the world. We're starting with an English tour in September, and when that finishes, coming straight over here and doing a complete American tour using provincial orchestras, but bringing the choir and the group and basically the same nucleus of people with us.
Fantastic. How many people will that be, Rick?
It'll be about 110 people on the road, and picking up about a symphony orchestra in different cities, which will be about 101 pieces.
How can a tour like that possibly, this might be too personal a question, but it's the first thing I think of it, how can a tour like that possibly make any money?
Well, it won't, it can't, I don't think. But obviously you don't look upon it as losing money or making money, because you hopefully there to promote your music and bring people towards your music, which will hopefully in the long run sell records. So you almost use the record sales to subsidise a project like that, because it would be destructive if you just went and did if I just say brought a group over and used a very small orchestra and a very small choir and did it sort of on a lot smaller basis.
You could never recreate the sound.
No, it wouldn't help the music, and it would be destructive to the music, and you'd lose all round in the long run then.
How long did it take you to write Journey to the Center of the Earth?
Over a period of 18 months, really. Which was in between sort of Yes tours, in between sort of breaks that we had in between recording.
How long did it take you to write The Six Wives of Henry VIII? That was a phenomenal album, too.
That was 11 months in between, Started in November 71 on that and finished October 72.
Fantastic. Have you written a lot of the material for Yes, too?
No, very little. John was the main writer of the actual songs, and we all had a sort of an equal part in sort of the arrangement and the orchestration of the music, which, even though we didn't write any songs, there's sort of just as much sort of music on the album as there is sort of songs.
That's The Battle from Rick Wakeman's Journey to the Center of the Earth, and we're visiting with Rick Wakeman in the studio today. This is rather a difficult album to play on this particular program. I'm sure you know by now that it is a narrative album. And Rick, how did you happen to choose the Jules Verne story as the basis for an album, Rick?
Well, I like doing things to concept because it's easier to bring out the best in music to write to an already proven theme. It's interesting to note the majority of albums that come out, the sort of the titles and the themes that run throughout the album are often very weak, or the titles have actually got nothing to do with the music themselves, which made me think that perhaps a musician finds it very difficult to write for the right thing. So I felt that if I picked on proven concepts and nice stories and things that contained a lot of colour to write for, that it would bring the best out in my music. And I read a lot of books, and I've always been interested in 19th century science fiction, H.G. Wells, Jules Verne type science fiction. And Jules Verne I like the best because he was more of a science fiction prophet.
Yes.
Because 90% of the things he wrote actually came true.
Yes.
And this book is the only one that he wrote that hasn't been proven, that it's perhaps the only sort of science fiction story that he actually wrote, a science fiction novel. There's quite a lot of it that could actually be proven, such as that there could quite possibly be links between some of the volcanoes in forms of caves. And the whole book was written so colourfully to write. It was a joy to write for, with things like the battle, with the descriptions of the sea, of the forests.
It's fascinating, just fascinating. That's The Storm from Rick Wakeman's Journey to the Center of the Earth, and as I said before, unfortunately we cannot play the whole album. How did you happen to pick David Hemmings to do the narration, Rick?
That basically came about by accident, because The original idea we had, which was about a year ago, or a year before we did the album, was to use Richard Harris. He decided to go and get married and vanish off to the Bahamas or something, and because we'd never even thought clearly about choosing a narrator, because somebody suggested Richard Harris in the first place, and everybody stuck to it, never even thought about anything else. And then suddenly, when he couldn't do it, we were in sort of a real spot, because we hadn't really sort of thought about the situation. And Lou Reisner said, well, what about David Hemmings? And it's really funny, everybody thought, well, that should have been the first choice. That's who we should have had in the first place.
Yes, he's got a marvellous voice.
And we called him up, and he was really keen, and he put in a tremendous amount of work. I wrote all the narrations and gave them to him, and he changed a few odd little things here and there that he said were better to speak, easier to put over. He showed an incredible amount of interest, came along to lots of the mixes, and he was absolutely tremendous guy.
Oh, it's such a fascinating sound. I mean, he's got such a marvelous voice, and of course, your music for a background, it just makes the album one of the most fascinating pieces of music that's come out in our rock world for a long time. We're listening to Rick Wakeman from Journey to the Center of the Earth, The Forest. Rick, thank you so much for visiting with us today.
Thanks very much indeed. Thank you.
Rick Wakeman, and this is the Nightbird, Alison Steele.
Impressive, but then you've always been a very impressive man. You've cut your hair.
Yeah, afraid so.
I think you've grown taller. You put on some weight, have you? Used to be really, really thin.
Yeah, I went really, really thin. Then I went really, really fat. And now I'm somewhere in the middle, I think.
You look fine. You look fine. Now, of course, the question that I have to ask you that is on everybody's lips, can you tell us a little bit about how you happened to go back to Yes?
Yeah, that's... It came about, really, I suppose. I disbanded my band, the English Rock Ensemble, because I had the film to do and a live album that we'd done to mix and do a bit of re-recording. And I knew that I wouldn't be going on the road for about 7 or 8 months. And it's unfair to keep musicians on a retainer, just hanging about. And also, my bank manager wasn't very happy about it. So I disbanded the band. And at the end of the White Rock film, it came through till about, I suppose, October. And even after I left Yes, I still retained the same management, Brian Lane. Brian sort of came to me and said, listen, as you know, Yes are in Montreux in Switzerland recording. And he explained a bit about what was going on, which you can appreciate. I can't say what went on within the band because I wasn't there, so I don't know. He said, and Patrick's leaving, and they haven't started the album, though they've done a few demos. Would you like to go over and... well, lads want to know if you want to go over and just and literally work as a session musician on the album. And I said, yeah, that'd be fine. But I said, I'd like to go over first, hear a couple of demos or the ideas that they want to do, because if it's on the same sort of level as for example, a Relay, I mean, there's not much that I can relate to in that. So I wouldn't be able to help at all. And it wouldn't help them and it wouldn't help me. So I flew over about November the 7th to see them. And the four of them, that's John, Chris, Steve and Alan, had done a couple of demos of, very roughly, of 2 of John's songs. And I listened to it, and it was very much like what I felt the advancement should have been after Fragile and Close to the Edge. Musically, it was very song-orientated, but with a lot of sort of typical Yes playing. And we had a rehearsal that day, and I got sort of really into it. Then I stayed till the next day, and there was a party that was held by a guy called Claude Nobbs, who was the head of WEA in Switzerland. And at the party we were all like sitting round, and I think it was Chris who acted as sort of spokesman and said, look, listen, we know you didn't like the music when you left, but you obviously seem to like what's going on now. And I said, yeah. And they said, well, we seem to like what you're doing. Do you fancy making it a more permanent thing? And I said, yeah, fine. So I went back home, literally arrived back on the Saturday, packed my bags, left England on the Sunday, and I haven't been back since.
That's great. That's great. Now, you finished this album with Yes, your reunion album, but you're not going to discard doing solo projects now. You're going to continue to give us solos, aren't you?
No, well, as soon as we finished the Yes album, I started on my own album.
Oh, good.
Which I'll finish about the middle of June.
Oh, good.
And then I'll come most probably straight to... I'll mostly have a week off in Switzerland and come straight over here. Because we're all getting together about the second week in July from various parts of the world. I don't know where everybody's going.
That's
and then we're
good.
going to rehearse for 2 weeks, and then we start the tour at the end of July.
Good, good, because As much as all of us love having you back with Yes, we would be sorely disappointed if there weren't more albums like Six Wives and Center of the Earth. And
I think A&M would be as well, actually. And I think both A&M and my bank manager would be upset as well.
I think so. We're going to kind of step out a little bit of White Rock and reminisce with Rick's first solo album, Six Wives of Henry VIII. Here is Catherine of Aragon. It's always great to see you, especially looking so well.
Thanks very much.
Thanks for coming to see us.
Thank you.
Rick Wakeman, and this is The Nightbird, Alison Steele.